This week's video is brought to you by my upcoming manga Amaranth Angels. In a future where humanity is expanding into space, Sai Nishizawa is a starfighter pilot prodigy, flying alongside her big sister and their close friend. However, following a sudden tragedy, Sai only wants to run as far from a cockpit as she can. Fate, however, has other ideas. You could read the entire prologue, which details the events that lead up to Sai's decision, on Webtoons now, and you can subscribe to my Patreon to read ahead. If you enjoy Girls Und Panzer and the military moe genre in general, you'll love this too. Now, onto the video. So last week we took a look at the Oarai vs Saunders match from a more storytelling perspective, and there was quite a bit to talk about, so be sure to check out that video if you haven't already. Today though, we'll go through the first full-scale battle in the show from a more tactical and technical perspective. Spoiler warning for this battle of course, and possibly some stuff later, but probably not. That out of the way, let's get into it. In case we weren't already acutely aware that Oarai is badly outmatched here, at least on paper, we get an immediate reminder as the battle starts. Any battle gets more difficult when you're outnumbered, and it's even more challenging when you're both outnumbered and outgunned. Of all of Oarai's tanks at this point, it's really just the Stug 3 and the Panzer IV that have good odds of knocking out a Sherman. Not that the others are useless, but it's so much more of a challenge for those to make a major impact. One of the main advantages of Shermans in World War II, along with them being pretty reliable and easy to repair in the field, was that the Allies can make so many of them, and it didn't matter if the German tanks like the Panther or the Tiger were tougher or more powerful 1-to-1 in most scenarios, since there were almost always enough Shermans to overwhelm and outflank them. So here, with the Shermans having both the numbers and firepower and armor advantages, Oarai is going to be in for a very tough time. But numbers on their own don't win a battle, and especially not in a flag match like this. Miho and the rest of Oarai's team know that they can't take on Saunders in a straight-up fight, and they have no plans to do so. So the most important assets for Oarai in this battle are positioning, and more so, intelligence, the latter of which is basically the theme of this battle. It's easy to overlook just how vital good intelligence is when it comes to warfare, though most of us who've read and watched a lot of stuff on historical battles understand its importance very well. So many major battles have been won or lost due to good intelligence, or the lack thereof. The Battle of Midway is one example, and the German blitzkrieg into Western Europe may have played out very differently if French intelligence services hadn't completely dropped the ball. And when it comes to gathering intelligence on the battlefield, reconnaissance is one of the main ways to do so. Here, Miho dispatches 2 of her lighter tanks, technically medium tanks, to do some scouting, while the rest stick together to guard the flag tank. Her goal, as she mentions when going over the plan with her teams, not a bad idea to review since they are pretty new to this, is pretty simple. They'll need to utilize their mobility to isolate small portions of the enemy force for ambushes, and extrapolating from this, thinning the enemy numbers a bit would put Oarai in a better position to find the flag tank and take it out. It's also worth remembering that the Saunders strategy regarding their flag tank is unchanged since Yukari's infiltration, though Miho may have chosen not to rely on that, at least not until they realize Saunders has sent all 9 of their other tanks after them. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. On the other side, Kay is fully utilizing her numbers and firepower advantage, secreting her flag tank away while taking the rest of her tanks to go right after Oarai's scouts. Any tank Oarai loses is a massive hit, while Kay could afford to lose a couple in a head-on engagement should it come to that. The flag tank being away from the action also allows Alyssa, Kay's vice commander, to provide information to the mobile units safely. Of course, Kay has no idea, yet, where Alyssa is getting her information from, believing it to be presumably a combination of normal intel gathering and her intuition. Of course, as we quickly learn, Alyssa is pretty much just wiretapping. This has been done in one form or another since long-range communications became a thing, along with, probably more famously regarding World War II, code breaking. And the wiretapping may also be a bit of a dig at the US, given a few scandals over the past decade or two regarding spying even on its allies. Obviously, this gives Saunders a massive advantage, allowing them to position their tanks just where they're needed to try and pen in Oarai's tanks. Luckily for Oarai, Miho isn't overwhelmed by this, and manages to lead them out of the ambush by going at the enemy head-on. I'm not enough of a tank combat expert to say for sure whether this is a real-life tactic. My armor core position was at a desk, sadly. But considering all the tank nerds behind the show, there is likely precedent for it, and considering that tanks generally have their heaviest armor on the front, there's definitely logic in going at the enemy head-on. Plus, assuming you get through, it'll be hard for them to catch up and pursue, since they'd have just been going the other way, and would have to turn around to then begin their pursuit. Following this, of course, Miho realizes what's been going on, and she then makes the smartest possible decision given the circumstances, drawing on a long history of military strategy: counterintelligence. The simple and instinctual thing to do when you realize your adversary is spying on your comms is to, well, change the frequency or do something else that prevents them from continuing to spy. But a better, much more effective response is to turn their spying against them. And that's exactly what Miho does. And in addition to broadcasting fake orders over the radio, while they actually communicate using their cell phones, she utilizes other means of misdirection, like having Duck Team use their tank to pull logs and create a large dust cloud that'd make it look like more than one tank was in motion there. Making a small force seem like a larger one to fool the enemy is another classic, but always useful military tactic. And, through taking advantage of this, Oarai is able to lure two Shermans into a well-placed ambush that sees them draw first blood. And even better, as we see when episode 6 begins, Saunders isn't quite yet aware that they've been duped, so Kay is still relying on Alisa's faulty intel. This leads to most of the Saunders squad then being sent on a wild goose chase, giving Oarai time to search for, and stumble upon, Saunders' flag tank. The extended standoff between Alisa and Duck Team here is also a great depiction of a fog of war moment. Neither crew expected to run to the other here, so it takes them a few moments to fully process what just happened and then react. And from there, the chase is on. Alisa, with her position compromised, pretty much needed to eliminate Duck Team here to prevent the rest of Oarai from converging on her isolated location. But her haste also leads her right into Miho quickly devises upon learning of this. Alisa's big mistake here, apart from rushing out alone, is continuing on while blinded. That's never a good idea. And this leads us into that last phase of the battle. The three-part chase, as Alisa desperately flees after getting chewed out by Kay for her wiretapping stunt. Kay now finds herself in a difficult spot, in more ways than one. First, she needs a plan to help her flag tank out, and second, she has to figure out what to do about the unsportsmanlike conduct of her vice commander. As we know, she then quickly makes the fateful decision to only take enough tanks to match Oarai's team size, but includes with that the Firefly, which can easily take out any of Oarai's tanks. Once they join the fight, time will be on her side due to the Firefly's power and range. Again, Kay demonstrates a good ability to play to her team's strengths, even while limiting herself for the sake of fair play. And so the Oarai team finds itself on the defensive, even as they keep chasing the Saunders flag. Miho's initial steps are, again, simple but also tried and true. She gets her squad into formation, with the most expendable tanks, in this scenario, protecting her flag, while her most powerful tanks press the attack. There are often times in battles where some members of a team will need to sacrifice themselves for others, and that's the case here, as Duck Team and Rabbit Team, who in particular have distinguished themselves and made good on their promise after the practice match, sacrifice themselves for the flag tank and buy Miho precious time to get her tank into a good firing position on the high ground. That move does two things. It obviously gives them a better shot at taking out Alistair Sherman in a single hit, but it also forced the longer range Firefly to change focus to the Panzer IV instead of trying to go after the 38T, therefore ensuring that it all comes down to whether or not Hana can make the shot before Naomi and her Firefly get Anglerfish Team. And Hana does make it, just in time, allowing Oarai to grab victory from the jaws of defeat. None of the tactics utilized here by either team were particularly complex, but they were all very effective and well utilized. Things don't need to be complicated to be good after all. What matters more is how the tactics and forces at one's disposal are utilized. Both commanders here did very well with that, though Miho obviously came out on top, both due to Kay's sense of fair play, remember Senshiro isn't war after all, and the faulty intelligence Miho fed to Alisa. It's not hard to see why Kay enjoyed the match despite losing. There are a couple other little things from this battle worth touching on briefly before we finish. One is Miho's mention that Sherman's accuracy will be reduced due to firing while moving. This is very true, and also part of why Hana wanted a stationary position from which to snipe. Even with more advanced equipment today, tanks are generally better off firing while stationary. Miho's instincts also come into play during the final segment, as she realizes they were being targeted and manages to order Mako to stop the tank just in time. Situational awareness like that is a big part of what makes her so effective as a commander. And, as an example of something not to do, we have Alisa and her extended breakdown during the chase. This sort of thing happens all too often in real life, and it's the sort of thing you really don't want to see from a commander. Other shows might have felt the need to come up with much more elaborate, crazy strategies to make an impact early on, but Girls and Panzer isn't that sort of show. While it's obviously not 100% realistic, its creators want to portray plausible tank combat inspired by real battles, and to keep the tank function relatively grounded. They deliver here, and set a very high bar for the battles that follow. If you enjoyed this video and would like to support me and what I do here, check out the links below to my books and light novels. A link to my Patreon is down in the description too. I started sharing awesome updates, including completed pages from my upcoming manga Amaranth Angels on there, and there are other awards too. You could also read the entire prologue for free over on Webtoons. Additionally, I've got some cool merch over on TeePublic. And, God willing, the Kickstarter will be launching in less than a month. And as always, if you have any thoughts on this video or just anything Girls Und Panzer related you'd like me to talk about, definitely share them below in the comments. I'd love to hear them, and I do my best to read and eventually respond to all the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. That's all for now, so until next time.